right? What do we talk about in college? We talk about strength of schedule. Seattle would be way up there.
Bills, they're the scariest team in the AFC right now. They're absolutely rolling. What they did to the Cowboys.
Holier than thou.
That's right.
Steps up and delivers a 50-50 ball. What a catch by
Husky reports that he is on his way to the Milwaukee Bucks.
He's not getting his happy ending this time.
Okay, Tuesday, December 19th, just me and you. Zach, Justin couldn't make it, a little bit of a scheduling conflict. Awesome show, though. Dick Fain, recurring guest, 93.3 KGR in Seattle. Gonna break down the Huskies entering the Sugar Bowl against Texas coming up here at the end of the year. And then we're going to break down the Seahawks, especially coming off their Monday night game last night against the Eagles. A lot to get into with him. An awesome interview as always, and we'll break it all down with him coming up in about 30 minutes. First, though, Zach, let's break down NFL Week 15. Going to start with closest game like we always do. Start with you. What was your closest game of this past
It's got to be
Sunday?
Vikings-Bengals, the overtime classic between Jake Browning and Nick Mullins. Who would have ever thought that that would be the most thrilling game of the weekend? But that's exactly what it was. Both guys just throwing passes across the middle, across their bodies, just ridiculous playmaking on both sides. Vikings hadn't given up a touchdown 160 some odd minutes, and the Bengals scored 3 touchdowns in the fourth quarter alone. T. Higgins had 2. It was just a wild back and forth game. Some questionable play calling by the Vikings, the 4th and 1 quarterback sneak in overtime, but Bengals 3 in a row, very much in the playoff mix. Now, what a game that was.
Yeah, no, it's a great game. And Bengals, of course, keeping their playoff hopes alive with this game, all things considered. And, like I said, just an awesome game by them. And Jake Browning continues just to play really well. My closest game, I'm going to go with Browns-Bears. Only close, really, because Joe Flacco had 3 turnovers, 3 interceptions, pretty uncharacteristically of him over these last 3 weeks that he's been playing for the Browns. That's the only reason this game was really close. Got 14 points, the Bears did, off of his 3 turnovers. One of those, they ran it all the way back to the 1-yard line. So just a little bit of a short pass play for Justin Fields to get that touchdown. But Browns defense continues to play amazing at home. 236 total yards for the Bears, only 4 of 18 on third down. Justin Fields was running the entire game. Defense, pass rushers were in his face the entire game. Cornerback Denzel Ward was huge. I mean, he came back for the Browns. He played absolutely amazing. Kevin Stefanski, he's been playing just absolutely. He's been coaching this Browns team, amazing this whole year, given, all the issues that they had, Deshaun Watson going down and other injuries that they've had to deal with. Of course, Nick Chubb being down. Their defense, especially at home, just does not allow anything. Stefanski this year has won with 4 different quarterbacks and is beating teams that are currently he has beat 6 teams that are currently at 500 or better, in their record this year. He didn't seem to be a sure thing that he would be coming back for the Browns this year, going into the offseason, especially, having back-to-back losing seasons. But I think he's definitely settling his case going into next year for the coach for the Browns. But like I said, the Browns definitely, they held the Bears pretty, they held them all game, all things considered. Like I said, they really just could not get much going. And then Joe Flacco, again, just played absolutely amazing and keeping this Browns team alive on offense and well into playoff contention, and not even just playoff contention, but a team that nobody would want to play in the playoffs, that's for sure. And of course, closest game for me, Darnell Mooney, almost had that catch, the Hail Mary catch at the end, couldn't hold it in. And now the Chicago's playoff hopes are all but diminished at this point. Chicago had they had some momentum going into this week. They had some confidence in the previous weeks, especially on offense. Of course, this week can only produce 1 touchdown. Like I said, that touchdown was only off of a short little dink pass to Cole Kmet, off of that interception all the way to the 1-yard line. And their only other touchdown occurred on a pick 6, like I said, of course, and that wasn't even the offense. That's more the defense at that point. But Chicago, weird season for them. And it's kind of, what are your thoughts on this, Zach? It's kind of a shame for Chicago because, they they kind of played well towards the end, didn't make the playoffs, but now actually have a worse draft pick because they
Well,
played
they have
well.
the
And I
Panthers
think that
pick.
was
They'll have the number 1 pick in the draft in all likelihood. So,
true.
I mean, they'll be they're
True.
getting the best of all worlds right now, except for if they just been able to make the playoffs. Yeah, Darnell Mooney. How do you not hold on to that?
Yeah. He was like on his
Yeah.
back too, and it's just
All you gotta do is
the
cradle it.
impact on the ground. Just yep. I always think too, like when they do a Hail Mary play, there always should be somebody that either like one or two people that should just be below the whole crowd of people, because every single time, 9 times out of 10, it just gets batted down to the ground. And I think there should just be, they should play, they should practice it Hail Marys, that there's always like one or two people just like at the very bottom of that pile, because it's always going to be a good chance it'll come right to you. And Darnell Mooney did that this weekend. He just, like we said, couldn't wrangle it in, unfortunately, at the end. Most intriguing storyline, Zach? What was your most intriguing?
The football. We know that they've given away a couple of games this year, but if they get in the playoffs, nobody's going to want to play them.
Yeah, no, for sure. My most intriguing storyline is Baker Mayfield. Can he just be more consistent? That's my question. I mean, last 2 weeks leading up until Sunday, so not this past Sunday, but the 2 weeks leading up to that, he completed less than 50% of his passes. Yesterday, though, in Lambeau, was probably his best game as a Buccaneer, Baker Mayfield. He became the first visiting quarterback to post a perfect passer rating at Lambeau Field. Threw for 381 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 22 for 28 overall in his passing. Fourth career game for Baker Mayfield with 4+ touchdowns as well. But like I said, he's been pretty inconsistent all year. And, for me, especially as we go into next year with the draft picks looming and, Bucks needing to decide what they do at the quarterback position. I want to know if Baker Mayfield can be more consistent. He's had flashes. He's definitely had games where he's played amazing. And this Sunday in Lambeau was one of those games, but he's also had games this year where he's shown to be pretty anemic and can't really get much done. So especially for Tampa, having that, they're expected to have around like the 19th pick. So, little even further, even more than the middle. And I don't even know if they'll be able to get a good pick at that point at the quarterback position. But Baker Mayfield just needs to be more consistent so the Bucs know what they need to do going forward at the quarterback position. That's my most intriguing storyline. Zach, what was your surprise of the week?
Surprise of the week. I'm going to go with the Panthers. I mean, we'll probably talk about this game later as well, but beating the Falcons and just Arthur Smith, what are you doing, man? You can't use your playmakers correctly. Can't use Kyle Pitts. Can't use Bijan Robinson. This seems to be an evergreen theme with this team, but no rhyme intended there. But the fact of the matter is the Falcons, you can't score 7 points on the road in a game that, there were 45-cent tickets for this game. That's how not intriguing it was. And the Falcons now a game behind the Saints and the Bucs in the NFC South. Just nobody saw this coming.
Yeah, they have no offense. The Falcons have no offense. That's what it is. Especially they were even worse in the second half. First half, they think they had 6 total drives, and the second half they were only able to have 3 second half drives, which 2 of which ended in turnovers, and the other was a punt. So it just absolutely anemic by the Falcons offense. Bryce Young able to finally show a little bit of progress, in my opinion. I mean, he didn't play very well on offense, but that last drive, I don't know if it was the last drive, but he had a 17-play, 90-yard trek that run out regulation would, had an 18, a 19, and a 20-yard play on that drive as well. Was able to be a game manager in that situation, run the clock down, and that was pretty impressive by me for Bryce Young. But played against a team, like I said, that just has absolutely no offense, all things considered, and wasn't a super great, wasn't a very impressive win with that in mind, but win's a win nonetheless. My surprise of the week, though, I am going to go with Texans over the Titans. Texans were pretty much demolished. I mean, they had so many injuries. C.J. Stroud, of course, he stayed in Houston with that concussion protocol, and then they were missing their top receiver, Nico Collins, their right tackle, George Fant, Will Anderson Jr., he was also gone for this game. Case Keenum able to get the job done. Keenum's first start since week 17 of the 2021 season when he played for Cleveland. He threw for 229 yards and a touchdown and helped Houston outgain the Titans 340 yards to the Titans 204 yards. This is all considered too Titans playing at home, playing at Nissan Field. They play really, really well in Tennessee, in Nashville. So that, it's a good win, all things considered. Like I said, the Texans just being completely obliterated by a lot of their playmakers, especially C.J. Stroud, like I said. Will Levis, far from perfect, but That's because offensive line for the Titans is absolutely terrible. They have up to 50 sacks on the year. This is more than the last year, 2022 season, and there's still 3 games left to play. Derrick Henry couldn't do anything with their offensive line. It was so bad. Tejon Spears played pretty well, though. He managed 3.3 yards per carry, and he looked pretty good for the Titans. And my only other takeaway from this game is, given just how bad that offensive line is, I would love to see Derrick Henry go somewhere else next year. He's still one of the best running backs in the league. Of course, you just don't see it with this Titans team and how bad their offensive line is. Thank God Will Levis is so calm, though, especially as a rookie, because, I mean, there's rushers and people in his face every single play, it seems like, and he's always running around because they just cannot stop any pass rusher any game. So Derrick Henry, I wanted to see him go somewhere next year, and the Titans have their second loss in a row here, 2 weeks in a row, and they have to figure out things fast going into next year, because Will Levis is definitely has flashes to be a guy, and they need to put some help around him fast. Shootout of the week, Zach, what are you going to put as your shootout?
Shootout of the week, 49ers Cardinals. Highest scoring game of the week, and mostly done by the 49ers. Brock Purdy at this point.
Yeah.
He's campaigning for Christian McCaffrey to be MVP. Christian McCaffrey's campaigning for Brock Purdy to be MVP. I don't think you could go wrong either way. This offense might be the best in all of football when everybody's healthy. This is the best team in the league right now. Cardinals are able to keep up a little bit. They actually grabbed an early lead, but you knew that wasn't going to last. And, I mean, Kyler Murray played pretty well. But this was the shootout of the week. Not a lot of scoring this week in the NFL, but this game, 74 points, this was the shootout.
Ironically. Well, for the Cardinals side, this is my shootout too. Brock Purdy running away with the MVP. He played amazing Sunday. Traveris Ward for the 49ers, he played really well too. First career pick 6. And, he helped the 49ers get a sizable lead on the Cardinals as well. I mean, only other takeaway from this game is Niners continue to have pretty bad run defense. Their run defense is lacking. James Conner, Sunday, 86 rushing yards. Emari DiMarcardo, 64 yards on 4 rushes. Murray himself, Jamar Murray, 49 yards. He scrambled 6 times for that. And as a team, the Cardinals racked up 234 yards on the ground. 49ers have been struggling with the run all year, though. For example, their Week 6 loss to the Cleveland Browns, they surrendered 160 yards rushing to a Cleveland Browns team that is struggling without Chubb. So Sunday marked the first time since 2017 that the 49ers allowed more than 200 yards on the ground. Of course, after that, besides that, Cardinals couldn't apply any defensive help, though. Brock Purdy had all the time in the world to throw the ball, and the Cardinals didn't have any sack, and they only had 1 quarterback hit all game as well. Cardinals, though, they did play better, like you said, Zach, than we expected, especially on the run game. They had their best offensive game of the season. They outgained the 49ers 436 to 406 yards for the 49ers, and Sunday for the Cardinals was actually the second highest yardage total of the Niners have allowed all season. So Cardinals played pretty well, especially on the ground, and they even had a better time of possession than the 49ers. And I don't know if this was just the game the 49ers were looking past. They were looking past their opponent a little bit, but all things considered, that pretty bad game for the 49ers if you look at it from that side of things. Being one of the worst teams in the league, Cardinals being one of the worst teams in the league, and the bad for the defense that you can consider, and they played offensively pretty well, but they did allow the Cardinals team to rack up some points and get a lot of yardage on a team, like I said, that's for the most part pretty bad on offense. What was your snoozer of the week?
This was no game from the very beginning. Jets offense is completely punchless. They ran a fake punt for no reason, and the Dolphins, even without Tyreek Hill, just made it look way too easy. No Tyreek, no problem. They don't even need Hill for the Jets. Jets are just terrible. Offensive line for the Jets is very, very bad. Supposed to be good this year, but they have not showed up all year long. We've said it before on this show. I don't think it would really even matter who's under center with this offensive line right now, because it's just they can't stop anything. There's no urgency for New York. Dolphins, of course, like we said, playing without Tyreek Hill, but they were still able to tally up 290 yards of total offense while scoring on 6 of 10 drives. So Jets,
Aaron Rodgers not going to come back anytime soon. No need to. Their playoff hopes are completely done at this point. My snooze of the week, I'm going to go with Falcons, Panthers. We've already kind of touched on this a little bit. Falcons, no offense. Bryce Young played pretty well. My only other takeaway from this game is Chuba Hubbard remains pretty much the only offensive weapon for the Panthers. 22 carries for 87 yards. He had a combined 278 rushing yards over the past 3 weeks. Those 3 weeks have also seen the third year back notch 25 attempts and 23 attempts, setting up a hefty average of 23.3 attempts per game. So they just feeding him the ball constantly because that's the only option that they really had. Yeah, averaging over 23 carries per game over these last 3 weeks because, like I said, Bryce Young can't really do much in the air. Offensive line can't stop anyone, and he's pretty much running around the entire game. What game did we not get to? I think we pretty much got to all of them. Chargers, Raiders.
Yeah,
they played on. Well, I think we touched it. No,
how about my Colts 30-13 over the Steelers? 30 unanswered points. Gardner Minshew 3 touchdown passes, and they did this without their top 2 running backs, Zach Moss and Jonathan Taylor. Did it with Trey Sermon was getting the bulk of carries in the second half, and they did this without Michael Pittman, who got knocked out of the game with a concussion. Shane Steichen, if we're talking about Coach of the Year, Shane Steichen should be up there. Taking this patchwork team to an 8-6 record, the fact that they have a realistic chance to make the playoffs, 3-way tie atop the AFC South because the Jags lost yesterday against the Ravens in a game that, they were pretty punchless offensively, and then the Texans ended up winning yesterday. So Shane Steichen, I think, should be considered for Coach of the Year. I think it's him or Kevin Stefanski.
Really? Yeah? Not D'Amico Ryan? You don't think?
Yeah, you could throw D'Amico Ryans in there. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's been a surprising year for teams that were supposed to be bad and were good, and of course, those coaches will be in consideration for the Coach of the Year. Yeah, Steelers can't move the ball. Like they literally, if you watch the Steelers play on offense,
they've turned to Mason Rudolph for the rest of the season. Tells you all you need to know.
Yeah, and that's going to be ugly to watch. Broncos, Lions. I don't have much else to say.
Big bounce back for the Lions. They had to have that. Jared Goff 5 touchdown passes, and that was kind of a statement because we had some questions about this team because they lost 2 of their last 3. They hadn't looked all that good as of late, and they're going up against a Bronco team that was pretty hot coming into this game. So I think that was a big statement made by the Lions.
Yeah, no, for sure. Jared Goff played really well. I expected him not to play as well as he did. I thought they were going to run the ball a lot more than they did, and no, I was wrong. 5 TD passes for Jared Goff. So 5 TDs. I think he might have ran for 1, but 5 TDs in total for Jared Goff. Awesome game for him. Chiefs, Patriots. I don't think we touched base on Chiefs.
No, I've got something to say about that for New Week's resolutions.
Okay, we can save that. What other? Giants, Saints.
Yeah, the Tommy DeVito ride ended, and Derek Carr probably played his best game of the season. 3 touchdown passes, and they're now tied with Tampa atop the division. Yeah,
Tommy DeVito. He held the ball for too long all game. Took 7 sacks. Produced a large chunk of his 177 yards. That's all he had in passing was 177 yards, and a lot of that was in garbage time. So it was one of those games where the Giants' 6 points might even seem more generous than it actually even was because, it was a pretty bad showing, all things considered. Commanders, Rams. I don't think there's much else to really say about this game. Rams offense.
Yeah, they're in the mix for the playoffs now. 7-7 might get it done, and that the NFC, the bottom of the NFC, the wild card standings are kind of crazy right now, and the Rams are among that gaggle of teams. Matthew Stafford is throwing it back a little bit. Cooper Kupp's been playing pretty well as of late as well. 8 catches, 111 yards. Very reminiscent of the season he had in 2021 when he was having 100-yard games regularly. Yep. But Kyron Williams, 152 yards rushing. Where'd this run game come from?
Yeah, that was after his fumbling
right.
Twice, too. His first fumble of his career twice, and he overcame that 152 yards, like you said. Washington, even with rest, they lost their 5th consecutive game now. Ron Rivera, he's 1 for 3 coming off a bye. And, this is just a bad look for the Commanders. Bad year overall, and I don't think Ron Rivera makes it past this. Did we go with Ravens Jaguars. I don't actually think we even touched
Yeah,
on
I mean, the Ravens took care
Jaguars
of
last
business.
night.
Lamar played pretty well.
Yeah.
Jacksonville just porous end of the first half game management. I do not understand that at all. But I'm worried about the Jags a little bit. That offense has not been all that great these last couple weeks. They've fallen back into a tie for first place. They got Tampa on the road next week. It's not going to get any easier for the Jaguars, but the Ravens, I think, have solidified themselves right now as the team to beat in the AFC. And you talk about a potential Super Bowl preview, Ravens 49ers on Christmas night. That's going to be an unbelievable game.
Yeah. Yeah. And of course, we all know how Lamar plays against NFC teams. Baltimore ran the ball, so well this game. Jacksonville could not stop the run to save their life. Jackson himself had 7 carries for 67 yards. And in the second half, Keaton Mitchell had 7 carries for 7 yards.
Yeah, before he ended up hyperextending his leg, which you could just, ugh.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's out for the year now, I think, right? Yeah. Ravens, so dominant. Second half, only completed 3 passes. They finished with over 250 total on the night. Trevor Lawrence, 2 fumbles, pretty much eliminated any momentum the Jags had with his 2 fumbles. Had his first fumble at the Ravens' 23-yard line while trying to obviously have that handoff and then costing them 3 points there. And then the second fumble came deep in his own territory on a Justin Madubuk sack when the game was still 20-7. So yeah, just bad sacks or bad fumbles. And like I said, just killed the momentum for the Jaguars. They couldn't really get anything going. And like I said, most importantly, they could not stop the run from the Baltimore all game. I think Chiefs Patriots. I think I might have already touched base on this one, didn't we? I don't know, but I don't think there's much else to really say. Before moving on to New Week's resolutions and our interview with Dick Fain, I do want to bring up 2 quick things that were kind of circulating in the news. One, a pitcher coming out. I've been hearing this pitcher's name a lot. I've been seeing this pitcher's name a lot in the headlines. Yoshinobu Yamamoto. He is supposedly one of the best pitchers coming out in a long time. Contract is projected to be larger than Garrett Cole's record-breaking contract for a pitcher. He's a Japanese pitcher. He's been pitching in the Nippon Professional Baseball League over the last 7 years. He's one of the hottest free agents on the market, and his numbers for his contract, his projected numbers, keep climbing. And there's a lot of teams really interested. It looks like it's going to most likely be a bidding war between the Mets and the Yankees. It's going to be a bidding war between the 2 New York teams. Steve Cohen, David Stearns, they flew out to Japan. He also sat down with the Yankees. They're being very aggressive with him. Other teams, Giants, Red Sox, Blue Jays are also in the mix as well. But yeah, I just wanted to bring him up because I've been seeing his name and coming up a lot, and I had no idea who he was. I didn't really know anything about him, especially I'm not really following baseball as much, given that obviously the playoffs, the baseball's not in season. But what do you? Have you?
No, I haven't heard anything else. But I'm not surprised that the Yankees are involved because they need pitching in the worst way, and I'm not surprised the Giants are involved because they put out an equal offer for Ohtani. He just happened to choose the Dodgers. It seems like the Giants are always in the mix for these big free agents and never get them.
Yep. Outbid maybe. Yeah. It might help with the Giants though, given of course West Coast, him coming from Japan.
Yeah.
But that we thought this. Yeah. We thought the same with Shohei Ohtani, and that worked out.
A little bit.
Right. It's kind of yeah. It's there's other implications too for free agent pitchers, because I know like Blake Snell, for example, he's likely waiting on Yamamoto to sign, as he would be the best available pitcher to make a bid for. Jordan Montgomery is another name. Tyler Glasnow for the Rays, Corbin Burns for the Brewers, Dylan Cease for the White Sox. Shane Bieber as well. There's a lot of names for free agent pitchers that are just waiting for him to sign, because once he signs, they know that there's going to be teams that didn't get him and that will have vacant, much needed pitching openings filled. So yeah, a lot of implications for just other free agent signings for pitching, and we'll just kind of see where he goes. Timetable, January 4th is when he is expected to sign. I think he needs to sign by then. I'm not really sure why, but he does have until January 4th, but all signs do indicate that he will be signing prior to the new year. The only other thing I saw that I really wanted to kind of touch base on because I thought was kind of interesting, MLS, the best MLS teams are not going to be participating in the U.S. Open Cup next year and in the future. I thought it was a big news because if you look online, Twitter, Instagram, I mean, you look just social media and online elsewhere, people were really, really mad about this. So breaking it down, kind of, it's just what it entails and what it really meant was MLS, they came out this past week saying that the best teams are not going to be participating in the U.S. Open Cup that happens every single year. Instead, they'll be basically entering their D League quote unquote teams or affiliate teams, like their farm teams for each team. Of course, the Open Cup, U.S. Open Cup, is where the MLS teams will face off against other American teams, Mexico, South America, and even some teams in Canada, I think, also are eligible for the U.S. Open Cup. Single elimination tournament, founded in 1914. It provided a really meaningful competition between MLS and the first division teams in MLS and the other teams in the American soccer system. MLS owners voted this week, like I said, to reserve their teams. Like I said, we're sending their affiliate, lesser talented teams now to the 2024 tournament and further. Darren Garber, long-time U.S. Soccer board member, quoted, "Very poor reflection on what it is that we're trying to do with soccer at its highest level." So that was the reasoning for it. They just didn't think it really aligned with their expectations and what they wanted to do for the MLS going forward. So, yeah, a lot of people were upset, though. A lot of people were upset, not really happy, and apparently a lot more people like the U.S. Open Cup than we thought because you look online, people were pissed. New week's resolution, Zach. What is your new week's resolution?
Your Patrick Mahomes stopped throwing the ball to Kadarius Toney. He can't catch anything. We saw it yesterday. He just had another ball right in his hands that led to an interception. He's killed this team, cost them at least 2 games this year. The Lions game and the game, obviously, against the Bills last week. And he's just unreliable. You could even throw Sky Moore into that conversation. The Chiefs receivers are just so unreliable. If you're Patrick Mahomes, you throw the ball to Travis Kelce and I don't know who else. Noah Gray, perhaps, might be your number 2 option at this point. But, I mean, my God, the wide receivers for Kansas City have to be better because they're wasting the best defense of the Mahomes era by far. Patrick's still very good. And, they were able to actually run the ball a little bit yesterday with Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So the wide receivers have got to step up.
Yeah, yep. My new week's resolution, Detroit Pistons buy out Monte Williams. He over the offseason, he got a 6-year, $78 million contract. Detroit Pistons, of course, are on an absolute nosedive. They're terrible right now. The Pistons committed a lot of money for him, so firing him midseason doesn't seem likely. But the Pistons, like I said, are an absolute dumpster fire right now. It's hard to tell if he's doing a bad job coaching or if the Pistons are just that historically bad. But still, I mean, the Pistons currently are the 3rd worst scoring team in the league. Bottom top 10 defense. They're averaging a minus 10 point differential on the season so far. So, yeah, they're just an absolute dumpster fire of a team. He might get the rest of this year to show if he can turn the team around and push them in the right direction. But he's absolutely on the hot seat. It's never been hotter because this Detroit Pistons team is a historically bad team. I'm actually looking right now if they're still on a losing record or a losing streak. 23
to go for the record.
Losing streak.
Yeah, the Cavs
set
really? The record.
Is that
26 straight.
Not the Sixers. Okay, Sixers weren't far from
no, they
them,
weren't
I don't
far
think,
off.
but yeah, jeez, yeah. So they won 2 games this year. So they must have won the first game and lost the second, and then won the third, and then just have been losing ever since. That's 23.
The Sixers lost 28 straight, but that was spanning 2 seasons.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So it would be the biggest single season. Yeah. Got it. Jeez. Yeah, because I was going to say, I know the Sixers were not far from that. Dick Fain, let's move on to Dick Fain. Awesome interview with him. Like I said, he's a radio personality, 93.3 KGR in Seattle. Covers the Huskies very closely, obviously covers the Seahawks as well. Going to break down Washington going to the Sugar Bowl against Texas, and then we'll break down last night's game against the Eagles and Seahawks as well, and then kind of just in light of how the Seahawks are doing all season as well, and then playoff hopes that they might have coming down the road as well. So without further ado, let's head West. Talk to Dick in Seattle. Okay, we now head to the Pacific Northwest. Talk to Dick Fain, recurring guest. Dick, it's been a long time since we had you on last. Host of Softy and Dick, 3 to 6:30, right? Pacific time on 93.3 KGR in Seattle. Is that right?
Yeah, we go to 7. It kind of
Okay.
depends on how we're feeling that day, right? You know,
right. whatever the vibes lead to, right?
That's right, exactly.
I get how it is. Me and Justin are both kind of in local radio here a little bit. So, I did want to ask you though. So we're going to start off with those Seahawks. Coming off Monday night. Their victory against the Eagles coming up Monday night here. I do want to touch base with the Huskies, though, too, going into the Sugar Bowl in the New Year's. But let's start off with the Seahawks first. I was going to start off this interview with, if the Seahawks would have lost this game last night, and it looked like that was going to be the case, with Drew Lock leading that last drive, it looks like the Eagles were going to come away with that victory. My question for you to open up was going to be if Geno Smith would have played that game, would the Seahawks have beat the Eagles? Now, that question obviously is irrelevant now. So my question for you is going to be, are the Seahawks true playoff contenders? In my opinion, I know they still have to make the playoffs. They still have a little bit of ways to go. They need some help. They need to win out, of course, to solidify that spot in the playoffs. But my question for you is, do you think that they are actual playoff contenders going, into these last 3 games of the season here? I personally think they do. I think they're a much better team than their record says that they are. And I want to get your thoughts on it as to why the Seahawks actually are a playoff contender and a team that people don't want to see. NFC teams don't want to see in the playoffs.
Yeah, I have yet to find a team other than Seattle that has 3 wins over teams that have a 9-5 record or better and have no losses against losing teams. So the way I kind of addressed it in the postgame show last night, I said, if this were college football or college basketball, and you take a look at a resume, right? What do we talk about in college? We talk about strength of schedule. We talk about strength of record. Who have you beaten, right? Seattle would be way up there. They are that, they are that college basketball team that makes the NCAA tournament as like a 7 seed, despite going only like 12-10 in conference, right? Because they're just in this monster conference. Mm-hmm. They have won at Detroit. They have beaten Philadelphia. They have beaten 9-5 Cleveland. They pretty damn near beat Dallas at Dallas on Thursday Night Football a couple weeks ago. Mm-hmm. And I can't find a team, including San Francisco, that has 3 wins over 9+ win teams and no bad losses on the entire resume. There is not one loss to a team worse than 7-7 on the Seahawks resume. So yes, if this is a team that plays as well as they did last night, particularly on the defensive end, they have Tennessee, Pittsburgh, and Arizona to close things out. Now,
those could be wins.
You can never assume a 4-game winning streak to end a season, but Tennessee's not playing for anything. Arizona's not playing for anything. Pittsburgh's the only team that's playing for something. And so if you can get through that, then all of a sudden what you said, Jared, is exactly right. They're a team at 10-7 at the end of the season that nobody's going to want to see, because then you'll look back at the resume. Everybody will realize, well, wait a second. They beat Detroit. They beat Philadelphia. They closed out on a 4-game winning streak. Hang on a second. Maybe one of the reasons they're only 10-7 is that they had to play San Francisco twice. Only one of 3 other teams in the entire league that have to play San Francisco twice. They had to play Dallas. They had to play Philadelphia. They had to play Detroit. I mean, this schedule has been brutal for the Seahawks this year.
Which only helps the team going down the line. If you think about it, going into the playoffs, it's only good to play tough opponents. That is, if you make the playoffs, of course, right. It's going to help you in the playoffs. You mentioned the Steelers. That's in 2 weeks from now. Even that game might not matter for the Steelers, depending if they lose this upcoming weekend. They might be out of the playoff contention if they lose this upcoming weekend. But let me ask you this. NFC, what do you think the win total is going to be the needed win total is going to be to make the playoffs? Do you think they can maybe do it with, maybe even 8 wins in the NFC this year? I doubt it, but maybe especially 9 will probably get into the playoffs. You would consider.
Yeah, I think the one thing that hurts Seattle with the 9 wins, I agree that 9 wins can get it done, but they're going to need a little bit of help there at 9 just because they have the 2 losses to the Rams. That takes them out of the head-to-head tiebreaker with the Rams. And currently they don't have the tiebreaker with Minnesota either. So they're a little bit. They were looking really good, and when they were 6-3, I think they were 6-3 and 5-1 in conference. And so I was on the air saying, "My God, I mean, it would take a collapse to lose tiebreakers at this point. They're looking really, really good for the playoffs." I'm thinking, God, all they got to do is go 3-5 down the stretch, and they got it made. Well, then of course they lose 4 games in a row, and so we're looking at trying to have to scramble. But that win last night was obviously huge, particularly being a conference win as well. That would help them in the tiebreaker. I think if they get a little bit of help, 9-8 will get it done. But I think right now the juice that they've gotten off that win last night, they're not thinking 9-8. They're thinking, let's just take care of business and win these 3 games that they are supposed to win against Will Levis / Ryan Tannehill, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, and who do we got at Arizona? Kyler Murray. I mean, so it's right there for them, especially if the defense plays as well as it did, because they're not facing Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown and DeVonta Smith again this year.
For sure, yeah. And what was up with Geno Smith last night? I saw he was supposed to play, and then was he like a last minute scratch? Like, what happened with Geno Smith last night? Was he supposed to play, or? I
mean, all week long he was the definition of questionable all week long. I mean, normally you hear guys are questionable and you kind of got a vibe. Yeah, they're probably going to play, or nah, they're probably not going to play. I mean, Geno, like, this was like as close to 50-50. And maybe, I mean, I think the Seahawks probably purposely played it like that, maybe for strategy reasons, that they didn't want the Eagles really knowing who was going to be the starting quarterback. But we did find out that Geno Smith took every passing snap at practice all week long. Geno Smith, or Drew Luck, all he did was hand the ball off all week long in practice. And so that's what makes Drew's performance that much more remarkable. And yeah, Drew admitted he had no idea if he was starting going to that game last night. Geno Smith was out there. He was out there an hour and a half before the game doing his regular warmups. He came back out later and did when I really thought Geno was going to start is when he came out a second time to do some extensive drills that he had not done the week before. The week before he came out the first time, tested it out, and then he was like, "Nah, I can't go." And then Drew Lock did the rest of it. This time he comes out for the first warm-up, feels good, comes out for the second warm-up, so we're like, oh, yeah, he's starting. And then the team comes out in uniform, and we're like, oh, wait, where's Geno? He's not there. Yeah. And so we didn't find out until like a half an hour before the game started, maybe less than a half hour before the game started, that Geno wasn't going to start.
Well, you saw it last night. He was very hesitant to throw the ball last night. Really only the last couple drives where he really airing it out. And I just kind of want to get your thoughts on that. Was that because, I mean, it sounds like you just said it, hit it on the head there. It sounds like he was kind of rusty with throwing the ball. He might have been hesitant to throw the ball early in the game because he didn't get those reps during the week.
Well, I mean, it was just a bizarre first half. I mean, yeah. Philadelphia ran 34 of the first 43 offensive plays. I mean, Seattle's first drive was 3 and out. Their second drive was 3 and out. And then finally they were able to get a field goal on the board. And that's all they put up in the first half. It was a very, uninspiring type first half for the Seahawks offense. And then Shane Waldron, the offensive coordinator, did what he's supposed to do, and that's give the ball to Ken Walker. I mean, it's baffled me all season long, and maybe they're just trying to protect him. Maybe they're like, okay, he's not a workhorse back. Maybe he can only, touch the ball 15 times a game. But I mean, everybody sees it. Anybody that's ever watched football sees it. I mean, you give the ball to number 9 and special things happen. I mean, he makes 2 or 3 guys miss. He gets out of a tackle. I mean, guys can't even pull him to the ground when they're tackling him out of bounds. Like he refuses to go down to the ground no matter where he is. And that is a guy that you have to base this entire offense around. And that's just going to open up things for DK, Jackson Smith and Jigba and Tyler Lockett. And I'm just hoping that they do what the Bills are doing right now. What are the Bills doing right now? They're like, okay, you know what? We're going to give the ball to James Cook, and everything else is going to be predicated off of that. And it's working pretty good for Buffalo. And that's exactly how Seattle has to run, because it saves their defense and it allows them those big plays downfield later in the game that they were able to get in that final drive.
So since we're on the talk of running the ball versus passing the ball, Do you think this is a 100% quarterback-driven league still, even with the success of the running backs? And do you think that this is not just a Seahawks problem, but a league-wide problem of why teams are not running the ball as much as they're passing the ball?
Yeah, I mean, it is a quarterback-driven league. I mean, you're only going to go so far if you have a mediocre to less than mediocre quarterback. So yes, but I do think that balance has never left. Success through balance offensively has never left the game, and I think some teams have left it behind. I think it's starting to come back. Everything's a pendulum, right? In sports, right? We're going to get, we went to the crazy side of Brandon Staley going for it on every single fourth down, and now we're seeing teams come back and realize, okay, maybe Brandon Staley was an idiot and shouldn't go for it on fourth down, and now he's out of a job. So I think everything swings back and forth, but even the best quarterbacks need balance. I mean, look at the Chargers, look at the Bills. You can't drop back. Even Patrick Mahomes, you can't drop back 45 times a game and expect to win and have a 2-to-1 pass to run ratio. It just doesn't work. You take a look at the best teams in the NFL. The two best teams in the NFL right now are who? San Francisco and Baltimore. What do? They run 50% of the time. 50% of the time. And it opens up everything else. It makes the game so much easier for a guy like Brock Purdy. And that's what Seattle needs to go back towards that. I mean, Seattle was up there, you wouldn't think of this from a Pete Carroll offense, but they were like sixth going into this week. They were sixth in pass frequency. It's like, Seattle should not be sixth in pass frequency. They shouldn't even be sixth in pass frequency when Russell Wilson was the quarterback, because Russ was always at his best when he was throwing the ball 30 to 35 times, not 40 to 45 times.
Yeah, and it sounds like, going off Justin's question, it sounds like this whole controversy we had going into this season about the running backs and, being able to pay lesser tier running backs getting the same quality, it kind of sounds like you're not really in that boat. You do still value running backs and a good running back tremendously.
Yeah, I really do. I think the running back position in the NFL is the one that I really think gets the shaft when it comes to collective bargaining. And the only answer that I could potentially see is that drafted running backs should have 1 year less on their rookie deal than the rest of the positions. Because then, I mean, right now, you draft a running back in the first round, which I'm a proponent of. A lot of people say you can find running backs anywhere. I'm like, hey, if you got Bijan Robinson that you can grab, if you got Ken Walker that you can grab, I would grab them, because I've got 5 years with this guy. And I would, under the current rules, as unfair as I think they are, what would I do? I would beat that dude into the ground. I would give him the ball 250 times a season plus for 5 straight years while he's 22 through 26 years of age. And then I'd pick up that option, and then I'd be like, okay, thanks, appreciate it. I'm gonna let some other team try to pay you. I'm not gonna pay you. And that's what's, I think, unfair about the collective bargaining for running backs. Guys like that, I mean, Chris Carson was a perfect example. Chris Carson never really made any money with the Seahawks. And he was a stalwart for a good 3 seasons. And they gave him a little, he got I think it was like 2 years, $10 or $12 million at the end, just kind of a thank you very much deal. But Chris Carson never got paid the money that he was due. And a lot of these running backs don't get paid the money that they're due. I mean, a few of them do get that big deal. But what happens when they get the big deal? Zeke Elliott and the Cowboys. How'd that second contract work out for the Cowboys? I mean, Zeke played maybe half of that second contract before he broke down. So something's got to be done to kind of fix the salary structure with the running backs.
Opposite of the spectrum, I have a weird question for you. And I don't want to ask too broad of a question, but how do the fans feel about Russell Wilson these last 2 years and how he's been developing in with the Broncos in Denver?
I think it's different this year than it was last year. I think last year Seattle reveled in everything that happened, both in Seattle and in Denver. I mean, you could not, as a Seahawks fan, you could not have painted a better picture of what happened in 2022. Geno Smith, Russell Wilson's backup, takes over and leads them to the playoffs, beating Russell head-to-head on Monday Night Football in the first game. And Russell goes on to not only a disastrous season, but just on the field and off the field. I mean, there was a new make fun of Russell Wilson on social media story like every week. I mean, remember when he was doing calisthenics in the airplane on the airplane? I mean, it was the gift that kept on giving the whole season long for the Seattle Seahawks fans last year. And part of the reason was that it was fresh. And another part of the reason was that the Seahawks were made better by Denver failing because of the first round draft pick. And so you wanted Denver to lose as many games last year as possible. And I think this year it's kind of toned down a little bit because it's, okay, bygones be bygones. We made fun of you for an entire year. You were the laughing stock of the NFL. You and Nathaniel Hackett were an absolute bleep show. And now we don't have the benefit of your draft picks anymore. So we really don't care if you win or lose. And so when Russell had that success, which is now kind of falling off the cliff again, and he's getting screamed at by Sean Payton, but when he had that success in, what was it, October, where it's like, hey, Russell's looking better. Maybe this Sean Payton thing's going to work. I think most Seahawks fans were like, okay, that's cool. Go ahead and have, we got what we needed. We got our 2 first-round draft picks. We're a playoff contending team. Go ahead and have a little bit of success. We're okay with it.
Well, yeah, and, I forgot about that draft pick too last year. You guys having the Denver's draft pick with that trade, and then, of course, time heals all wounds too. Before moving on to the Huskies, obviously Sugar Bowl coming up, New Year's. I want to ask you 2 quick questions. What is and this can be rapid fire, Dick, but what is one big concern you have for the Seahawks? And then what is one thing I'm so confident that that's not a flaw in the team and we're not going to have a problem with
that?
That's
good. Yeah, good question. I think up front on the defensive line, I think that's probably my number one concern. They schemed it well last night. They're just saying, hey, we're going to rush 4. We're not going to blitz. We're not even going to worry about pressure Jalen Hurts. We're going to keep everything in front of us, and we're going to force Jalen Hurts to try to beat us downfield and beat us with his legs. Now, he beat him with the legs pretty good. I think he had 79 yards rushing, but he couldn't beat you downfield. I mean, there was just no vertical game for the Philadelphia Eagles. And so I think the Hawks are going to have to probably play defense that way. Because they're just not really stout up front. They're not great against the run. They're not great in the pass rush. They did add Sheldon Williams, so that helps a little bit. He has solidified the inside of that defensive line. But losing Uchenna Nwosu at the beginning of the year, he was really the best pure pass rusher that the Seahawks had, and that's been a hole that they have not been able to fill, that edge spot. Boye Mafe played really well, but he had sacks in 7 straight games. We haven't heard from Boye Mafe in a month. So it might have been, hey, a blip on the radar for Boye Mafe, and now teams are really scouting him and really saying, okay, we got to make sure this guy doesn't get to the quarterback, and he hasn't been able to touch a quarterback in the last month. So up front on the defensive line, that's probably my number one concern. What I'm not worried about, I just think the Hawks they're just a good team. That's what they are. They're nothing more than just a good team. Now, this year in the NFL, a good team is better than 2/3 of the league.
Yeah.
Right? So, there is a lot of garbage in the NFL this year, and the Seahawks are better than all of that garbage. I mentioned they have not lost a game to a team with a losing record this year, but they're nowhere close to Baltimore. They're nowhere close to San Francisco. We've seen that in 3 games. They're not going to beat San Francisco in the playoffs, but they're a team that could beat anybody else in the NFC on any given day. I'm not afraid of any team in the NFC playoffs other than San Francisco. So if you get the right draw, maybe you win a game or 2 and you can get all the way to the NFC Championship game and face San Francisco there before you lose. They go to the Super Bowl.
For sure. And it'll be hard. It'll be hard to beat a team 3 times in the NFL. So, hey, if they do face San Francisco again, it might be a different outcome, and they can beat the Eagles. Obviously, we saw last night. So, but yeah, no, we agree, and we've been saying it, Dick, throughout this, this whole season, really, especially since the mid season of the NFL. This is the most parity I think we've seen in a long time. You get these teams that you're either an elite team or you're just not an elite team, and there really is only like you said, Dick, 3 teams that we could maybe say are in an elite category right now, and everyone else it's just kind of, second tier or third tier. But it really is the most parity I think we've seen in a long time.
Well,
in the
and then there's only
NFL.
3 or 4 teams at the bottom too. I mean,
Yeah.
you take out the Panthers, and I mean, even the Cardinals are kind of scrappy sometimes, right? I mean, there's really only 2 or 3 teams that you're just like, okay, the Patriots and the Panthers probably, right? I mean, I'm probably missing one too, but I mean, teams 4 through 25, they're probably all separated by like 4 points. I mean, it's crazy how much parity there is. And a lot of that is the fact that there's so many backup quarterbacks right now. So every team is going down. I think I read where like over almost half of the quarterbacks that started this past week on the salary structure were salaries ranked 35 or below for quarterbacks. I mean, so you've got almost half the league starting backup quarterbacks right now.
No, that's a whole nother discussion. That's because obviously a big talking point in the NFL this year was having a lesser product, a more mediocre product, as Tom Brady said. And I think we talked about it at length over the whole season. And that's maybe one of the reasons why it's been a lesser product. It's because of all the backup quarterbacks and all the injuries at the quarterback position, which shows you why they want to keep them safe, right? I mean, this was a perfect example of why there's so many penalties and fouls that are put into the rule book in the NFL in order to protect quarterbacks, because I think this year was a really good example of why they do that, because if quarterbacks get injured, it's going to be a lesser product. And I think this year was a really good example of that.
And football fans aren't dumb either. I mean, they'll tolerate 1 year of this, but if this continues for 3-4 years in a row, you better believe the ratings are going to start to come down. Because who wants to watch, Mason Rudolph against Bailey Zappi? Like, nobody wants to see that. And so if you have too many of those matchups, then people are just going to start clicking. I mean, I've gotten to the point now where that Thursday night game between the Patriots and the Steelers, I was like, I've got zero interest in watching that football game. And there's been many of those, that Raiders-Chargers game, I was like, are you kidding me? This is just awful, awful football.
Well, especially down the line, end of the season here, there's so many games that they scheduled that looked good on paper going into the season, but now that things have changed dramatically, they're obviously just not good anymore. But yeah, it's a star-driven league, Dick, for sure. And it's, like I said, hasn't really been the case this year. Real fast, Huskies going into the Sugar Bowl, obviously New Year's Day, 2 weeks from now. Could be more a bit rapid fire, because I don't know if we've even done a lot of scouting yet on Texas, just being 2 weeks away. So much can change in that time. But let me ask you this real fast. I mean, are we concerned about Texas getting revenge from last year's Alamo Bowl? Obviously, Washington beating Texas 27-20, and that they are they're facing off again, rematch this year coming up in 2 weeks. Are we concerned about Texas kind of wanting revenge from last year's Alamo Bowl?
Well, I mean, if you weren't concerned about Oregon getting revenge in the Pac-12 championship game, I don't think you're probably concerned with an exhibition game last year. Now, it was a big win at the time. I think the Huskies took pride in beating Texas, but let's face it. I mean, the Alamo Bowl is the Alamo Bowl. It's not even as important as a regular season football game, and the magnitude of this game is tenfold. And the magical thing about the Dogs this year is they've just taken on all challenges, taken on all comers, and they're just like, bring it. We don't care. Bring it. Everybody in the world thought Oregon was going to come and whoop them in the Pac-12 championship game. Oregon was going to be ticked. Oregon was going to be more physical, and the Huskies just took it to them from the get-go, and they played physical football. And I think hopefully that opened up eyes around the country as to what the Pac-12 was this year. The Pac-12 was a well-rounded, solid physical conference this year. It wasn't your Pac-12 of a few years ago where it's just fun and gun, throw the ball around 50 times, score 50 points in a game, and then when you play a team from the Big Ten or a team from the SEC, you get smashed. Oregon and Washington were, in my opinion, 2 of the 4 best teams in America. Absolutely. I think Oregon's better than Texas. I really do. I think Oregon and Texas are very similar teams, and Oregon's got the better quarterback. I would take Bo Nix over Quinn Ewers every single day. They're both, sketchy accuracy-wise down the field, but I think Bo can just do so much more with his legs than Quinn Ewers can. That being said, hey, the rest of Texas's team is just as good as Oregon. So it's going to be a really, really tough battle. But I to be honest, I do think the wrong team is favored. I thought the wrong team was favored in the Pac-12 championship game. But in this game particularly, I think the wrong team is favored. I think people are, once again, like they have all year long, sleeping on Washington.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned too how we said it on this show over the years, this whole year too, how unfair it is for Washington to basically have to beat Oregon twice just to make the playoffs. And if you look at it, I mean, that really is kind of the case. They had to really beat Oregon, which you said, and I actually agree with Dick. I think Oregon is a top 4 team in the country, and they had to beat them twice just to make the playoffs, which is kind of unfair for Washington's sake if you think about it. But what do you what's like your biggest factor, your key factor in this game going into it, both sides of the ball? I mean, for me, it's really rushing the quarterback. I mean, the pass rush. I mean, I think that's Quinn Ewers has shown that he's not as good when he gets rushed. When there's a hand in his face, he's not as good. I mean, we saw in the Big 12 championship game against Oklahoma State when he was barely pressured. He, had a field day with Oklahoma State, but then of course their one loss of the season, he was sacked 5 times and really struggled. So, and then of course Michael Penix, if he has all the time in the world too, he's going to light it up in the sky and also, have a field day with their defense. So would that be something you would consider being one of the biggest key factors going into this game, is just getting to the quarterback, making them uncomfortable for both sides of the ball?
Particularly on the Husky offensive side of things, because that Texas defensive line is probably their best unit. 2 first-round draft picks. One of them is 360 pounds, so that's going to be a load that the Huskies haven't seen. But the Huskies offensive line has been excellent all season long. They've been tested this year against some good defensive lines, and so if Michael Penix is clean, I think it's going to be very, very difficult for Texas to handle what I feel like is the best trio of wide receivers in the country. You've got your individual guys. You got your Keon Coleman's out there. You got your Marvin Harrison's out there. But Rome Odunze is, for my money, the best wide receiver in college football. I would draft him very, very high in the first round. I think he's a lock star in the NFL. He's got all the physical traits you need, plus just the most brilliant hands and able to. I mean, he's a lot like what you saw last night from Jackson Smith and Jigba. I mean, Rome Odunze makes that catch in the corner of the end zone like Jackson Smith and Jigba made that catch in the corner of the end zone. I mean, that's the type of hands you're talking about. And if Michael Penix gets time to just sit back there and relax and go through his progressions, it's probably going to be a long night for Texas. But in order to do that, though, Seattle's going to have to run the ball. And my favorite, outside of Rome Odunze, my favorite offensive player, it's funny here, I'm talking about the Heisman runner-up being like my third favorite player on the offense, because Rome Odunze has been my favorite player on the offense. And Dylan Johnson, everything should go around Dylan Johnson. We talked earlier in the podcast about how everything should go around Ken Walker with the Seahawks. Everything should be predicated on Dylan Johnson, because in their biggest wins, both wins against Oregon, big runs against Oregon State, big runs against Washington State, Dylan Johnson has been the catalyst. And if he can get 20, and his magic number has been 20 carries for 100 yards. If he can get 20 carries for 100 yards, that just means he's involved and everything is kind of working around the running game. And if Dylan can get 20 carries for 100 yards against that stout Texas line, the Huskies are in really, really good shape in this game.
Yeah, it's weird because it's like you just said, Dick, you can kind of see this game going both through the ground and through the air too. I mean, Texas is really good at running the ball too. Of course, Jonathan Brooks out for the year, but they didn't have Bijan Robinson last year either against Washington, and they turned out fine. So, but Texas, even without Jonathan Brooks this year, I mean, they're averaging just under 208 yards a game on the ground, and every single one of those 3 games that they played without Jonathan Brooks, they've had a different leading rusher. So they definitely are capable of running the ball too. But like you said, the offensive line for the Huskies is really, the defensive line for the Huskies can stop people too. And it's going to be, I don't really know what's going to happen as far as it's going to be one in the air or one in the ground, but it might be a combination of both. And we'll have to just kind of see what happens there. But It's going to be a close game. I think it's 3.5, 4 right now is the spread. But I know you said that Texas.
It's been 4.5 most of the time, and I think, I think that definitely is too high of a spread. I mean,
and you mentioned it.
It should be an even game. It should be an even game. I mean, if I said the wrong team's favorite, it'd be okay. I mean, I'd be surprised if anybody put Washington's a 3-point favorite over Texas. But I mean, I think that's where it should be. I think Washington is somewhere between 1 and 3 points better than Texas, but that means that it's almost a 50-50 game, right? It can go any way. It's going to come down to turnovers. It's going to come down to, who converts the 3rd and 6s and the 3rd and 7s and keeps the chains moving. And so Texas has an excellent shot to win this game. I'm not trying to undersell them. I think they deserve to be there. They beat Alabama. That's what got them the ticket in, and they deserve to be there as well. And I think they're probably, I mean, are they one of the 4 best teams in the country? I mean, Washington is, Michigan is, and then you can kind of really throw up flip a coin on, Alabama, Oregon, Texas, who are your 3, 4, 5 teams that should be in. But, I think they're all better than Florida State. I was not, I feel bad for Florida State fans, but I don't think Florida dances with any one of those teams that I just mentioned.
Yeah, I agree. I think they got it. I mean, it's two things we said it before. 2 things can be true at the same time. I mean, they got the best 4 teams in. I mean, Oregon's kind of a question mark, of course, like we said, but it still does suck that Florida State got taken out. So it sucks that they got taken out, but I do think they weren't supposed to be in there. And I think 2 things can be true at the same time. But going off what you just said, I think, not to state the obvious, but I think whoever has this ball the longest is going to come up winning this game. And I think that's where the running attack comes in such handy. So, is so important in this game. I mean, Huskies are one of the best teams in the country at 3rd down conversions, if I'm not mistaken. Am I right? And then that's going to be huge going into this game, just having the ball the longest and, running that clock down and just having that, whoever has the ball last is most likely going to win this game. What do you think?
Yeah, and getting those 3rd and 1s and 3rd and 2s as well, because then you still keep the threat of the run there. Penix is so good at just getting a snap and getting the ball out for 4 or 5 yard gains. He's got a multitude of wide receivers. He's got 2 good tight ends, so he's got lots of targets that he can get it to. The problem will lie on if you get false start penalties, you get sacks, and then all of a sudden you're staring at 3rd and 12. And that's when Texas can pin their ears back, and that always makes it tough. And so I think moving the ball on 1st and 2nd down, getting those 3rd and shorts are going to be key for Washington.
This has been really fun, Dick. Last couple of questions I have. What are the overall thoughts of Washington going to the Big Ten next year? How do we feel about that?
It's where they need to be. I think we're all, this world of college football is going to a 2 superpower, structure, right? I mean, 5 years from now, if you're not now maybe just ask Florida State, right? If you're not in the SEC or the Big Ten, I mean, you're going to get left behind. And so the Huskies are playing that game. They're going to do fine in the Big Ten. They've got the right coach. I'm not saying they're going to come in and just all of a sudden be right there with Michigan and Ohio State and be winning Big Ten championships every other year, but they are certainly at that level with, that Penn State level where, I think 3 or 4 teams from the Big Ten is going to make the Final 12 every single year. And I think Washington, you got 6 teams, right, that are going to be competing for that. It's going to be Michigan, it's going to be Ohio State, it's going to be USC, it's going to be Oregon, and it's going to be Washington and Penn State. There's just 6 superpowers in the Big Ten, and those 6 teams largely will be finishing in the top 3, top 4 in the conference, and those teams are going to be making the Final 12. And so, the Huskies have made the Final 4 twice in the last 7 years. I'm not counting 2020 because that was a fake year. So twice in the last 7 years, they've made the Final 4. There's no reason that a team that makes the Final 4 twice in 7 years can't make the Final 12, 3 or 4 times over the next 7 years. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility at all.
No, I was going to say Husky fans must love the expansion, the 12-team expansion in the playoffs, because like you said, they're going to be seeing themselves in that playoff structure for a long time, long years to come. Kalen DeBoer, do you think he should be Coach of the Year consideration?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is a team that had a really tough schedule. They had to play USC. I mean, down the stretch was ridiculous. I mean, you go USC, Utah, Oregon State, then a rivalry game with Washington State, all to get back to Oregon for a second time. I mean, this Pac-12 was nasty this year, and I'm very surprised the Huskies escaped unscathed. I mean, I really thought beginning of the year, I thought they'd probably lose 2 games. But I thought they had a great chance to make the Pac-12 championship game, and I thought, okay, if they can just lose one, and I thought the one was going to be at USC. We didn't figure that USC was going to be the most disappointing team in college football this year. I thought that would be the game that they lost at the beginning of the season, and I said, okay, well, if you lose at USC, you get an opportunity for a rematch against USC in the Pac-12 championship game. That's kind of how I saw the season panning out, and instead it was Oregon instead of USC taking that spot. But Kalen DeBoer, just he's gold, man. He is absolutely gold. He is. You name your top 5 coaches in college football, Kalen DeBoer absolutely belongs there. The guy never loses. He never lost it. In North Dakota or South Dakota, rather. He's not losing here. He's lost 2 games in 2 seasons as the head coach of Washington. He is unbelievable.
Amazing. Well, Dick, it's been really fun. One last question, kind of blending Seahawks and Huskies here together a little bit. If it ended today, NFL season ended today, Seahawks would be 15th pick in the draft. What are the chances Penix goes to the Seahawks next year?
I think they're going to look for a quarterback. I really do. And so he's going to be one of those probably 3 or 4 guys that they're going to have to evaluate that are going to be going in that 15 to 20 round range in the NFL draft. Now, they're probably going to finish close to 20 because they're probably going to, like we said at the beginning, they're going to win 2 or 3 of these last games and finish with 9 or 10 wins. But he'll probably be there at that point. I think Seattle fans will be pretty happy about that.
Yeah, because Michael Penix will probably be around that point, right? He probably will be around 15, 16, 17, 18, 20 around there. So I've heard a lot of buzz about, Seahawks might be interested in him. Obviously, he knows his way around the city at this point. So, well, Dick, this has been really fun. I'll be in touch. We'll have to do this again sometime soon. Sorry it went a little bit longer, but definitely appreciate your time. It was a lot of fun. So I'll definitely be in touch, okay? Okay, let's finish the show. Intake and outtake of the week. Zach, what is your
intake of the week? This last Saturday of college basketball, one of the best regular season days in recent memory. You talk about Arizona, Purdue. That game lived up to the hype. Alabama, Creighton lived up to the hype. Kansas, Indiana was a great game. Kentucky, North Carolina was a great game. It felt like the first round of the NCAA tournament because we had so many big-time matchups. And I think you look at the top of college basketball this year, you've got Purdue with Zach Edey, of course, trying to bounce back after losing to a 16 seed last year, but they're really good. Kansas is very good, maybe the best starting 5 in the country. Houston, we know how tenacious they are defensively every year. I don't think this is going to be a year that we're going to have a whole lot of Cinderellas as far as 9 seeds or anything like that making the Final Four. I think you're going to see real blue blood contending teams this year. I think the top of the sport has been fantastic so far.
Yeah. My intake, Eagles having Matt Patricia take over defensive play calling duties going forward. Sean Desai will remain as the defensive coordinator, but Matt Patricia will be taking over the actual play calling duties for the defense. Patricia has remained largely in the shadows pretty much all season. I mean, he's been fired as a defensive coordinator, or he has been fired as a senior defensive assistant this offseason, but then, of course, now is going to be helping with the play calling duties on the defense going forward for the Eagles. He hasn't been made available to talk to reporters despite requests. Desai, though, has spoken every week as the coordinator always does. The Eagles allowed 33-plus points in 3 straight games for the second time in team history. The last time was in 1967. Their 428 average yards per game allowed since week 8 is the most in the NFL over that span as well. So defense for the Eagles has been absolutely abysmal. Of course, they're on a bad stretch of games currently. But yeah, the Eagles are definitely in a bad shot defensively speaking, and Matt Patricia will take over play calling duties going forward for the team. So yeah, let's see if that can do anything to help. Justin or Zach, what is your outtake?
My outtake of the week: Damontae Casey being suspended the rest of the season for a dirty hit on Michael Pittman during the Steelers-Colts game on Saturday. I guess he's been a repeat offender, has been fined 5 previous times. So this is what's going to happen when you play dirty. I mean, you're going to get suspended. And look, I know that they put the 100% of the onus on the defender, and I don't know if that's necessarily right. And I think Gardner Minshew kind of set up Michael Pittman with an inaccurate throw. But you just can't go headhunting, and when you do that, you're going to get suspended. I don't mind it, only because we've seen Vontaze Burfict do this before. We've seen guys just playing helmet head football at this point. So, yeah, Damontae Casey being suspended the rest of the season does not surprise me.
Yeah, I'm going to go my outtake, and going back to what you were saying with your intake, Zach, UConn men's basketball, they should be number 1 rated, I think. I mean, UConn is being underrated once again. The team has been dominant all year. They're deserving of the top spot, in my opinion, but they did lose that close game to Kansas, unfortunately. That's kind of what's keeping them out of the top 1 or 2 spots. But currently now, of course, it's Purdue and Kansas at 1 and 2 makes sense, but UConn should be the next team up for sure. I don't think Houston deserves to be ahead of UConn currently as the standings go. I think UConn has been pretty dominant all season long. And like I said, they once again find themselves underrated, going into, almost about halfway through the season so far. So that's my outtake, kind of just UConn, I think should be maybe a 1 or 2 seed, if not at least 3. 4 is right now, but where they're at right now is fine. But I do think UConn deserves to be at least like a 3 seed, or if not even 1 or 2. All right, good show. Be back Thursday. We don't know, might not be able to make it, Zach, but me and Justin will hold down the fort, and then we'll head into the holiday with best of shows on Saturday and then next Tuesday as well. But until then, take care and keep on traveling.